but utilizing captured German technology which showed the benefits of a swept back wing. Boeing's B-47 was to have the wing that was not only swept, but was so flexible that it could move within an arc of 17 feet. However, so that the wing could remain thin, the 6 engines had to be mounted in pods suspended from below. The outer pods contained 1 engine apiece, but the inboard pods contained 2 engines which were suspended several feet below the wing surface. And it was with this equipment that the engineers from both companies worked together to attach to the far outside wing of Boeing's Giant. With 6 turning and 4 burning, the 36 was at last, in part, entering into the jet age. The other event which was to secure the future of the 36 took place on June the 24th, 1948, when the Soviets closed the gate on Berlin, signaling in one step the beginning of the Cold War. Now, the growing concerns of communism polarized into an action which shocked the West out of its post-war complacency. As NATO forces now found they were confronted with a potent adversary, in a matter of days the need for an intercontinental bomber had gone from hypothetical to the very real. At this stage, there was no one plane in the world able to fulfill the long-range potential of the Convair Giant, and rather than cancellation, orders for the Peacemaker were actually increased. As concern continued, the importance of America's Strategic Air Command, which was responsible for long-range bombing, increased considerably, and it was ultimately placed under the direct command of General Curtis LeMay. LeMay had an impeccable Second World War record. It started with his early involvement in the European bombardment with the Army Air Force, and continued to when he took command of the Pacific operations and the B-29 bombardment of Japan. Considered one of the great strategists in American wartime experience, he also supervised the Berlin airlift and was now seen as the most qualified person to bring the Strategic Air Command, including its fast-growing fleet of 36s, to the highest possible state of readiness. Under LeMay's iron leadership of SAC, the American public took comfort in the fact that although they now no longer had a monopoly on atomic weaponry, that at least they had what was probably the best platform for delivery, the B-36. So concerned was the military about protecting its intercontinental bomber that security was stepped up to effectively a wartime footing, and personnel in SAC control rooms were required to carry firearms, even though they were in fact hundreds of miles inside American borders. The concern to protect America's big stick even required mechanics servicing the engines to carry firearms whilst they worked. Exercises continued at an ever-increasing pace. Night and day, and in all weathers, LeMay worked his crews.
Out, this is engineer. Engineer's checklist complete. Ready for takeoff. Over.
Pilot checklist complete. Ready for takeoff.
Roger, give me 100% on the jets.
Roger. Jets coming up.
Engineer, give me full power. Full power coming on.
Jets 100%. Tailpod tempo okay.
Takeoff power is set. Everything stabilized. Engineer ready for takeoff. Roger. Carswell Tower, Air Force 653, ready for takeoff. Air Force 653, Carswell Tower, roger, clear to roll. Roger, 653, rolling. Here we go. Give me climb power. Roger. Climb power coming on. Give me 96% on the jets. Roger, 96% on the jets.
Usually flying as single aircraft rather than in formation, SAC's Peacemakers would practice bombing raids over vast distances and at next to no notice. The 36s utilized a K-1 bombing navigation system for precision accuracy. the K-1 system contained no less than 365 vacuum tubes and enabled the 36 to bomb at high speed in any weather.
Pilot, go ahead. Pilot will be over the prime point in 20 minutes.
The target was usually a radio signal from special trucks built to gauge the accuracy of SAC's aircraft. Although the fact that B-36s were to cost over $5 million apiece, they, together with the K-1 system and LeMay's insistence upon constant training, provided a combination which was anything if not accurate.
Pilot, this is radar. We're over the IP. Pick up a heading of 197.
Bob Flight Air Force 653, over the IP. Altitude 35,000, on an inbound heading of 197 degrees. Bomb Flight Air Force 653, 30 seconds to go to bombs away. 5 seconds to go, bomb flight. Phone switch coming on.
The pencil in the plotter's hand represents the plane moving over the graph scale towards the target.
Bombs away.
However, despite the enormous potential of the Convair giant, detractors often considered its large size to make it a prime target for enemy fighters, and even before the first 36 even flew, the Air Force ordered a unique auxiliary, the McDonnell Goblin, as a parasite fighter to be actually carried within the B-36. This incredible design consisted of the barest essentials and had fold-down wings which would enable the aircraft to be totally concealed within the 36's bomb bay. Never actually used with the Peacemaker, its flight controls were conducted from a B-29 mothership, and flight trials commenced in 1948. In August, with test pilot Ed Scorch secured in the cockpit, the Goblin was launched by a trapeze mechanism from the B-29, and the pilot successfully flew what must be one of America's most remarkable fighters. However, when Scorch came to reconnect the Goblin hook to the trapeze, turbulence lifted the little fighter, and the mother plane mechanism broke the canopy and wrenched the oxygen mask away from the pilot. But Scorch was just able to regain control and crash land this tiny fighter. This setback did not stop development. The second and only other Goblin produced continued its task. Eventually, on October the 14th, 1948, a successful hookup was effected, and the Goblin pulled into the 29's belly. But this bomber-parasite fighter combination, although bold in concept, was never to be adopted because it seemed to present as many problems as it tried to solve. However, a later parasite project involving the B-36 was the Phycon fighter conveyor concept. This program began in 1952 and involved mating up a Republic F-84 directly underneath a modified Peacemaker. There was no intention of fully consuming the F-84 within the mothercraft. Not until after the aircraft and its parasite were in the air would the fighter pilot enter into its cockpit, and he, working as a team with the highly trained boom operator, who was positioned in the mother plane, would attempt the delicate and skillful task of lowering the fighter via a large hydraulic-operated boom to a point below the bomber where the fighter could be successfully released. This task actually proved very successful, and the process of recoupling, although requiring great skill, was perfected to a fine art. The combination of these aircraft provided many potentials, especially as the pilot was able to come and go from the fighter when it was in the docked position. In actual fact,